It's bothering to me because, Mr. Chairman, you yourself have been very successful. Rightfully so. Glad you have been. You've been in office for 28 years. Why is it that he's corrupt and you're not? Why is it that all CEOs are corrupt because they're wealthy, and yet our chairman, who is wealthy, and I'm glad you are.
I'm record here. You've made more misstatements in a shorter period of time than I have ever heard.
Markwayne Mullin just turned a Senate hearing directly back on Bernie Sanders. After Bernie spent the hearing attacking wealthy CEOs and corporations, Mullin hit him with one brutal question. If millionaires are corrupt, then why does Bernie get a pass? What followed was a heated back and forth as Mullin called out Bernie's wealth, book money, and double standards right to his face.
The story will come back to that because it sounds like something to do.
I hope you do.
I'll defer to Senator Markwayne Mullin.
Well, thank you. And considering the chairman doesn't want to hear any of that information because I believe he's pretty biased in his opinion already, Mr. Schultz, I'll give you an opportunity to finish that if you'll do it quickly.
Thank you very much. So, as you might imagine, we're very curious to understand what happened in Buffalo. And we later found out that this individual, which was hired in 2020, was paid for and under the employment of the union that was basically trying to organize Starbucks. We later found out there was more than one person. And so you might want to ask yourself, where's the fairness, right, the objectivity, and the integrity of what we're talking about here today?
No, and I mean, if you're anti-union as a CEO, you're anti-union busting, or you're for union busting. I'm not saying you're anti-union. I'm just saying that it seems like to me, as a former CEO, not nearly at the success that you were at, sir, and I'm not trying to defend your company because, quite frankly, politically, we're on totally different ends of the spectrum. And so the irony of this hearing is actually kind of funny. And I do want to point out some hypocrisy about this hearing with the chairman. And it's not trying to get personal. All this information is going to be very public. But the fact that you can't defend your company because you want to have a good relationship with your employees and you believe in employee value, which we all do. Any CEO knows that the success of our companies are based on our employees. We get that. But it seems like unions today, all they want to do is fight with their employees or their employer, the same employer that is hiring those team members, and that friction causes a very volatile and tough workplace. And if the company and the employees aren't in the same boat, rowing in the same direction, then they can't. Neither one can be successful. And unions themselves, if you're part of a union, you can never be an executive, you can never be a manager, and never be a CEO. And if you can't be an executive or a manager or the CEO, then how are you actually going to implement the changes that the unions want in those positions to begin with? And it seems like they actually hold back their team members. Mm-hmm. But I take offense to the chairman pointing out that all CEOs are corrupt because they're millionaires. You know, if you make a lot of money, you're corrupt. It's bothering to me because, Mr. Chairman, you yourself have been very successful. Rightfully so. Glad you have been. You've been in office for 28 years, and you and your wife have immersed a wealth of over $8 million. And in fact, your quote on being wealthy and being a millionaire was, well, if you write a bestseller, you can be a millionaire too. If you can be a millionaire, why can't Mr. Schultz and other CEOs be millionaires and be honest too? If that's the case, then why is it that Mr. Schultz, who actually creates jobs and a bestseller of a book, isn't creating any jobs? Why is it that he's corrupt and you're not? Why is it that all CEOs are corrupt because they're wealthy, and yet our chairman, who is wealthy, and I'm glad you are, you're not? Guys, the government's role is to create an environment for entrepreneurs, for go-getters, for world changers, to be successful in life. The U.S. government is designed for people that want to succeed can. We can go out and achieve anything that we choose to. But when you lean towards socialism, what you think is government is the answer and unions are the choice. And if you're against us, then you're dead wrong and you must be corrupt. That's not the world we're living in. That's not the America that we believe in. And I'm not against unions. If you want to choose to be in a union, be in a union. But if you choose not to, then you choose not to. And that's why I'm good with right-to-work states. That's honestly why unions actually thrive in Oklahoma, and we're right-to-work states, because it creates a happy environment and a good environment, because employees get to choose what they want to be part of. And the employer can have a say in it. What is wrong with choice? What is wrong with employees having a choice? What is wrong with the CEO defending his company and openly saying that he is providing good benefits and paying higher than everybody else? But yet, if you're not part of a union, you're also paying starvation wages. What hypocrisy! What bias! Chairman, you are chair of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee. We shouldn't have a biased approach. We should have what's best for America and all those that want to thrive and work in it. And so while we politically disagree, Mr. Schultz, I applaud you for your success. And I applaud all the CEOs out there for their success and all the employees that work hard, that's in the same boat, that's making their companies great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, let me respond. The senator did mention my name, I think. And I think you got an all-time record here. You've made more misstatements in a shorter period of time than I have ever heard.
Please correct me.
Well, if I'm
because
worth
it's all
$8 million,
public.
excuse me.
It's all public.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right? Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
If I'm worth $8 million, that's good news to me. I'm not aware of it. That's a lie. All right? Number two.
Part of public records.
You're probably looking at some phony right-wing internet stuff. It ain't true.
No,
All right? You should read beyond that. It is not true.
it's
All
part
right?
of public records.
No, it is not public record.
Okay. Well, you made
It is not
$1.7 million on your book.
public record.
You made
All right? It is-
1.7 on your book.
Excuse me. I've got the mic now. Number
you not
two,
make the statement
I
that if
have
you want to
the
be a
mic
millionaire?
now. I've got it.
Did you
had
not
your
make
time.
that statement?
You had your time.
Okay.
All right? You're not telling the truth. Second of all, you got no evidence that I have ever said that all CEOs are corrupt. I have never, ever said that.
Probably not all, but every time you talk
probably
about
not,
CEOs,
then
you do
shouldn't
say that.
Say it. Furthermore, what this hearing is about is whether or not you talk about being pro-union. Really, what this hearing is about is whether workers have the constitutional right to form a union. The evidence is overwhelming, not from me, but from the National Labor Relations Board, is that time after time after time, despite what Mr. Schultz is saying, Starbucks has broken the law and has prevented workers from joining unions to collectively bargain for decent wages and benefits.
Watch this exchange. Well, that was one of the most revealing moments you'll ever see in a Senate hearing, because for once somebody stopped letting Bernie Sanders control the narrative and forced him to answer the same standards he applies to everybody else. For decades, Bernie Sanders has built his entire political brand around attacking wealth, attacking corporations, attacking CEOs, and portraying successful business leaders as greedy villains who exploit workers. That's been his message since the 1980s. Every campaign speech, every rally, every hearing, it always comes back to the same thing: rich people bad, corporations evil, capitalism unfair. But Markwayne Mullin exposed the giant contradiction sitting right in the middle of Bernie's entire political identity. Bernie Sanders is rich, not struggling middle-class rich, not barely getting by rich. Bernie Sanders owns multiple homes, made major money from book sales, and has spent decades in Washington becoming exactly the kind of wealthy elite he constantly rails against. And that's why Mullin's questions hit so hard. He wasn't just arguing policy, he was exposing the double standard. Mullin basically asked the question millions of Americans have wondered for years. Why is Bernie Sanders allowed to become wealthy without criticism, but entrepreneurs who build businesses and create jobs are automatically treated like villains? That's the part Bernie never has a good answer for. Howard Schultz built Starbucks into a global company employing hundreds of thousands of people. Whether you agree with Starbucks politically or not is irrelevant. Those are real jobs, real paychecks, real benefits, real opportunities for advancement. Millions of Americans have worked there over the years. Yet Bernie frames Schultz like he's some kind of enemy of society simply because he's successful. Meanwhile, Bernie Sanders writes books attacking capitalism, becomes a millionaire from those books, buys expensive homes, and suddenly wealth isn't evil anymore. Suddenly becoming rich is perfectly acceptable. Suddenly it's, well, if you write a bestseller, you can become a millionaire too. That was the quote Mullin brought back to haunt him, and you could tell Bernie hated hearing his own words repeated back at him. What made this exchange so powerful wasn't just the argument itself, it was Bernie's reaction. The second Mullin started talking about his wealth, Bernie immediately became defensive, angry, and dismissive. He accused Mullin of spreading right-wing internet stuff. He interrupted constantly. He tried to shift the conversation back towards Starbucks and unions because he didn't actually want to stay on the topic Mullin introduced. And honestly, that reaction told you everything. Because if Bernie truly believed wealth itself was immoral, then he'd apply that standard to himself too. But he doesn't. The standard only seems to apply to business owners, investors, CEOs, and entrepreneurs. Government politicians who become wealthy after decades in office somehow get a pass. That's the hypocrisy Mullin was driving at. And Mullin also touched on something broader that a lot of Americans are increasingly frustrated by, the attitude that success itself is suspicious. There's this growing political mentality on the left that if someone builds a successful company, earns a lot of money, or becomes wealthy through business, there must automatically be corruption involved. That mindset punishes ambition. It punishes risk-taking. It punishes the very people who create jobs and economic growth in the first place. America became the strongest economy in the world because people were free to build businesses, invent products, hire workers, and create opportunity. That's the system Bernie Sanders constantly attacks. Now, does that mean every corporation is perfect? Of course not. Does that mean every CEO is a saint? Obviously not. But there's a massive difference between holding companies accountable and treating capitalism itself like some kind of moral failure. Mullin made another important point that got buried in the media coverage. He said employees should have a choice. That's the key word the modern labor movement often avoids. Choice. If workers want to join a union, they should absolutely have that right. But workers should also have the right not to join one. That's why right-to-work states continue attracting businesses and jobs. Employees shouldn't be forced into political or labor organizations they don't support. Freedom goes both ways, but in today's political climate, disagreement itself often gets treated like wrongdoing. If a company resists unionization, they're automatically portrayed as evil. If a CEO questions union tactics, they're accused of union busting. The assumption is always guilt first, evidence second. And that's exactly what Mullin accused Bernie's hearing of becoming. A political show trial where the conclusion had already been decided before the hearing even started. That criticism clearly struck a nerve because Bernie immediately tried to regain control of the room. But the damage was already done. Mullin forced the conversation away from the usual socialist talking points and onto the uncomfortable contradictions Bernie Sanders spends most of his career trying to avoid. Here's the bigger political reality Republicans are increasingly leaning into. Americans are tired of being lectured by career politicians who became wealthy while claiming to fight the rich. Bernie Sanders has been in government for decades. He didn't build a private company. He didn't create an economic empire. His fortune largely came from politics, fame, and book deals connected to his political brand. Meanwhile, people like Howard Schultz actually built something from the ground up. Again, you don't have to agree with Schultz politically to recognize that reality. This hearing ultimately became about something much larger than Starbucks. It became a clash between two completely different visions of America. One vision sees success and wealth creation as something to celebrate because it drives opportunity, jobs, and innovation. The other sees wealth primarily through the lens of inequality and exploitation. Mullin defended the idea that success is not a crime. Bernie defended the idea that corporations need far more government pressure and labor control. And whether people admit it or not, that debate is becoming one of the defining political battles in America right now. Because voters are increasingly asking themselves a very simple question. Who actually creates value in this country? The entrepreneur taking risks, building companies, and hiring workers? Or the career politician spending 40 years attacking the people who do? That's why this moment went viral. Not because of some scripted Senate drama, but because for a few minutes, somebody finally challenged Bernie Sanders using Bernie Sanders' own logic, and Bernie clearly did not like where that conversation went. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts on the exchange, and share this video because moments like this deserve a lot more attention than the mainstream media is willing to give them.